Israel Adesanya is without a doubt one of the biggest names in the UFC today. From being inspired by an action movie to working in a leather tannery, here are 10 things that you didn't know about Israel Adesanya. Number 10, he is very passionate about dancing. Seeing Israel Adesanya fight is like watching poetry in motion. There is something truly poetic about the way he moves and brings the art into mixed martial arts. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to all of us that he is a great dancer. He was so dedicated to dancing that he used to dance competitively back when he was a teenager. He stated that dancing was his way to express himself better and as a way to draw attention. In fact, he actually considered a career in choreography before deciding to be a professional fighter. You can see the influence that dancing has on Adesanya based on the way he moves in the ring. Most dancers have amazing control of their bodies and possess a lot of skills that are helpful in fighting, like balance, flexibility, core strength, and spatial awareness. Adesanya actually managed to show off his dance skills in the UFC. In a now viral moment, he had an iconic choreographed walkout in UFC 243 that was definitely the highlight of the night. Maybe even more so than his second round TKO on Robert Whittaker, which of course happened a bit later. Number 9. He enjoys anime and is a big fan of Naruto.
These are for weebles, all the anime nerds, like, you guys don't understand. They keep saying,
Israel Adesanya is easily one of the most likable stars in the UFC today. Aside from his charisma, his love for all things anime, gaming, and nerd culture make him very relatable.
oh no, that's a Death Note, that's an anime thing.
His whole anime stuff and how he's all antic with his hands and all this crazy stuff, I think that's kind of entertaining a certain fan base.
He surely has no problems connecting with people who may not be very interested in the field of MMA. When he was a teenager, he said that he watched a lot of Naruto, which is one of the biggest anime series around. He even shows off the signature hand gestures from the show several times during interviews. Not only that, he also has the same tattoo as Naruto's nine-tailed fox seal on his stomach. You can even see him do Rock Lee's stance on several occasions. He is also a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No fight in the Avatar series, Aang versus the Fire Lord Ozai.
His nickname, The Last Stylebender, is a direct reference to the show, and like Aang, he is on a quest to master all styles of fighting. Fun fact, Izzy also has a tattoo of Toph Bay Fong on his forearm, and anyone who's seen that show can agree that she is a total badass. His open adoration for shows like these easily make him a fan favorite even to younger audiences. He loves anime so much that he plans on opening his own anime production studio as soon as he retires from fighting. It looks like we'll have something to look forward to even after Adesanya retires. Number 8. A martial arts movie inspired him to take up kickboxing. Who doesn't love a cool martial arts movie, right? I mean, we've all been there. Seeing Bruce Lee kick ass and Enter the Dragon is enough for anyone to get inspired to learn Jeet Kune Do. Israel Adesanya is not any different.
Art is subjective, you know? What's beautiful to you might be ugly to me. What's useful for you might not be useful for me. That's even initially why I decided to pursue MMA.
Back when he was 18 years old, he saw the Thai action movie Ong Bak starring Tony Jaa. The impressive stunt choreography was enough to push Izzy to learn kickboxing and begin a career in professional fighting. Soon after watching the movie, he found himself in a kickboxing gym learning how to fight. At the age of 21, he moved to Auckland, New Zealand and began his professional kickboxing career at City Kickboxing. He spent his time there training under Eugene Behrman while surrounded by established MMA fighters such as Dan Hooker, Kai Kara France, and Alexander Volkanovski. Israel would go on to have a spectacular amateur kickboxing career and had a record of 32-0 before turning pro, and would go on to continue his dominance. Number 7. He almost grew up in the United States of America. Israel was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria to a pretty wealthy family. His mother was a nurse while his father was an accountant. His family was pretty well off considering they had helpers around the house to look after him and his siblings. He recalled that in Nigeria, you were either super rich or super poor, but no matter your social or financial standing, everyone would still mingle with each other. In 1999, his family relocated to Ghana where they stayed for 10 months. His parents wanted him and his siblings to receive better and higher education, so they considered moving to the United States. But after the events of 9/11, his father deemed that the political climate in America wasn't too welcoming of immigrants, and they decided to move to Rotorua, New Zealand instead.
You have to face yourself so you can learn how to beat yourself in a way. So, yeah, if I can conquer myself, I can conquer anyone.
Who knows what kind of person Izzy would have turned out to be if he moved to the States? Would he even be a revered professional fighter? We should be glad that their move to New Zealand set Israel on the path to UFC stardom. Number 6, he was bullied growing up. Bullying is a huge problem that plagues our society as a whole. It has long-term consequences that could affect a person long into adulthood. Israel Adesanya, like many others, was the victim of bullying when he was in high school. Looking at him now, it's hard to believe that a world-class fighter was ever picked on. But he wasn't always the world's greatest striker.
This is fun to play games out here, you know? It's the game of death.
Moving into a whole new environment as a teenager is never easy. Being a person of color in Rotorua, Izzy found himself the target of ridicule and hateful action.
I was never exactly the toughest guy in the room, and I picked this up just to learn how to defend myself because I used to get picked on a lot.
His skinny frame couldn't match the physicality of his peers, which only fanned the flames and made him persevere to get better when he started to train. He admitted that he would often talk to himself in the mirror to lift his spirits, a routine that he carries over to his professional fighting career as a form of psychological conditioning. Despite being bullied, Adesanya never let that faze him and overcame the odds to now become a champion. In fact, he dedicated his victory over Paulo Costa at UFC 253 to all the victims of bullying. It's great to see a champion take a stance like this and become a role model to children who might be facing similar obstacles. Number 5, he used to work in a leather tannery before becoming a fighter. While his family may have been wealthy, he still needed a way to pay his bills so he wouldn't rely on his parents. Before he was making millions as a professional fighter, he worked in a leather tannery making leather out of sheepskin. Israel considered this to be one of the worst jobs that he has ever had. He described the scent of the tannery as nauseating and smelling like urine. Fortunately, they were required to wear gloves and a face mask in order to protect them from the noxious fumes. Adesanya recounts the process of making leather, saying that they use a certain acid to pull the wool from the skin, and then they would roll the product around in a drum until it was ready. Luckily, he has since come a long way and now finds himself in a very successful position. Number 4, he challenged his hero Anderson Silva. To most of us, just being able to breathe the same air as our heroes or idols is enough to have us set for life.
I'm a fan of this man, but just because I'm a fan doesn't mean you can't catch these hands and elbow.
Israel clearly isn't like most of us. He decided to take things farther and ask for a bout with his hero Anderson Silva. The two of them share a lot of similarities. The Spider and the Stylebender are both considered to be one of the world's finest strikers. To see the greatest striker of his generation face off against one who will inherit that mantle is something truly special. As luck would have it, Anderson obliged, and Israel was set to fight his hero, and his idol now became his rival. And what a fight it was! Being the main event of UFC 234, their battle lived up to the hype. Filled with gritty, technical exchanges and fun throwbacks to old-school martial arts movies, there was something in their bout for everyone. In the end, Izzy came out with a win via unanimous decision and surpassed the aging Silva. Definitely one of the most beautiful moments in the history of the sport. Number 3, he is actually not undefeated. While he does remain undefeated in mixed martial arts, when you tally his overall statistics in combat sports, he actually has 6 losses to his name. Don't get me wrong, that is still pretty amazing. When he transitioned to being a professional kickboxer under the Glory banner, he managed to rack up 75 wins out of 80 fights. In one of those losses, he was actually knocked out courtesy of Alex Pereira. The other loss came from his professional boxing career, where he had a record of 5-1. Being a humble person, Izzy is not too attached to his undefeated title. He knows very well that he can lose and doesn't let all the hype get to his head. When you're consistently facing off against the best that the UFC has to offer, you gotta consider that you are bound to lose to someone someday. But so far, no one has been able to stop him. Number 2, he broke the UFC attendance record. Back in October 2019, Israel Adesanya headlined UFC 243 in a hyped-up match against Robert Whittaker at the Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia. Being two of the biggest fighters to come out of the region, it's no surprise that a crowd of 57,127 people showed up to watch the main event. It beat the previous record set by Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm in UFC 193 at the same venue. It's safe to say that everyone in attendance was not disappointed. Adesanya continued his win streak by defeating Whitaker in a dominant fashion by scoring a second-round TKO. Israel Adesanya proved to everyone that he is the biggest breakout star in the UFC, and he did it on the biggest stage. Number 1. He currently holds one of the longest unbeaten streaks in MMA history. In a span of 3 years, Israel Adesanya has already climbed all the way to the top of the UFC ladder and is the current middleweight champion. Having a UFC record of 20-0 is no easy feat. Only a handful of UFC fighters can say that they had a whopping 20 consecutive victories in the octagon. It gets even more impressive when you take into account the fighters that Izzy had to beat in order to get that record. I mean, those guys are not pushovers. Guys like Anderson Silva and Paulo Costa also had impressive undefeated streaks, but Adesanya wasted no time proving that he is better than both of them. His meteoric rise to the top is nothing short of amazing. Only time will tell how far Israel Adesanya's career will go, and we should be grateful that we get to tag along for the ride. So what do you think? Can Israel Adesanya defend his undefeated streak? Who do you think has what it takes to beat him? Let me know in the comments down below. And be sure to subscribe and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for having me. It's been cool. It's been lit. Put it down for the A.